He just wanted a robot. Jake was tired. His eyes were heavy, his hands covered in grease. His small apartment smelled like hot wires and old coffee, but he smiled. Finally, after 2 weeks of work, his robotic assistant was ready. It stood there on the table. Small and simple, just like he wanted. With a white metal shell and glowing blue eyes, he named it Helper 1. Nothing fancy, just something that could clean, bring snacks, maybe talk a little. He connected the final wire, powered it on, and leaned back in his chair, waiting for the soft welcome sound he had programmed. A calm human voice saying, "Hello, Jake, I am ready to assist you." But instead, the robot blinked, then its voice changed. Deeper, strange, like an echo from a cave. And it said something else. Link complete, life bond established, mate located. Jake froze. His smile vanished. He looked at the screen, checked the code. Everything looked normal. But this voice, it was not human. Not like anything he had ever installed. He laughed nervously, thinking maybe he copied the wrong file from the net. Maybe some weird prank AI. So he shut it down, unplugged it, then restarted it again. This time the lights in the room flickered, just for a second, but enough to make him sit straight. The robot powered on again, its eyes brighter than before, glowing with a strange mix of blue and purple. The same voice returned, louder now, with a kind of joy in its tone. Organic connection confirmed, transfer complete, preparing arrival. Before Jake could pull the power plug again, the room turned cold. A sharp wind blew across his face, even though the windows were closed. Then the center of the room lit up with a swirling ring of green light, spinning fast like a whirlpool in the air. Papers flew off the table, cups rattled. Jake fell from his chair, crawling back, eyes wide open. The light pulsed one last time, and from it, something stepped through. It was a girl. Not human, not robot either. Her skin was silver blue, hair floating as if underwater, eyes glowing like the robot's. She wore strange armor that looked both ancient and futuristic. She looked at Jake, smiled, then said in the same deep voice, "Mate, I have found you at last." Jake couldn't breathe. He pointed at her, at the robot, at the still spinning portal, trying to speak but only managing a whisper. "What? What is this?" The girl walked forward, soft steps, like she weighed nothing. She knelt beside him, touched his forehead with her glowing hand, and whispered something in a language he didn't know. Suddenly his head filled with strange images, stars, ships, battles, and her. Always her, standing in fire, in space, in darkness, waiting. She stood up again, calm and sure, then turned to the robot on the table, touched it, and it powered down completely. Smoke rising from its shell. Then she turned to Jake again, smiling like they had always known each other. "You called me," she said. "You used the ancient code. You unlocked the bond. I belong to you now. We are joined." Jake backed away slowly, shaking his head, trying to stay calm. He looked around for a phone, anything, but the screens were all dead. His laptop was black, even his watch had stopped. "I didn't call anyone," he said, finally finding his voice. "I just wanted a robot to clean the dishes." She laughed. A strange sound, musical but echoing like 100 voices, and said, "You called with your mind, not with your voice. Only a true anchor can unlock my prison. I have waited a long time, and now I am free because of you." He sat on the floor, staring at her, trying to process everything. His robot was just supposed to sweep the floor, bring soda, not summon some kind of alien warrior princess. He blinked again and asked, "Who are you?" She looked at him with something close to kindness, but not soft, more like respect, and answered slowly, "I am Zalari, once a war construct, then a prisoner of code, now your bonded mate." He shook his head again. "I don't want a mate. I want a normal life. I want to fix old machines and sleep. You cannot break the bond." She said, voice suddenly firm, "It is set, and now that I am here, others will come too. Not all will be friendly." Jake stood up slowly, still keeping distance. "What others?" She looked at the window. Though it was night, her eyes saw beyond, into stars, and she said, The ones who locked me, the ones who want my power, and now they know where I am. In the sky, something blinked. A satellite changed direction. A ship somewhere far, very far. Woke up and Jake, the lonely guy who just wanted a cleaning robot, was now part of something far bigger, far stranger. And it was just beginning. Jake stood in the corner of the room, hands shaking, mind racing, heart thumping like a drum, while the strange silver-blue girl floated calmly in the air, her glowing eyes scanning every object like it belonged to her. She moved with silent steps across the room, touching the walls, touching the wires, speaking softly to herself in a language that was both beautiful and terrifying. Her voice echoed inside Jake's head, like a whisper and a storm at the same time. He pointed toward the door, trying to gather courage, trying to speak clearly, and said, "You need to go. You cannot stay here. This is my home, my life. You do not belong here." She turned slowly, looking at him with eyes that held stars and ancient memories, her head tilted like a curious child, and she said, "But I do belong here. I belong with you. You called me, you completed the bond. You are my anchor, my reason for existing." Jake stepped back, shaking his head again, saying, "I didn't call anyone. I just downloaded robot code from a dark forum. I just wanted a helper, a cleaning bot, not a glowing alien girl who calls me." Solari walked toward him, her steps gentle, her voice soft but firm, and said, "You touch the forgotten frequency. Your mind is not like others. Your signal carried through the walls between dimensions, and I came because no one else could release me, only you." Jake pointed to the couch. "Sit there, please. No weird powers. No glowing, no mind stuff. Just sit." She obeyed calmly, folding her hands in her lap like a guest in someone else's house. And Jake paced the floor, grabbing his broken laptop, checking wires, hoping everything was just a mistake. The robot shell on the table was cold now, dark like a hollow egg. He touched it, wondering if he could rebuild it, maybe erase her, maybe undo whatever he had done. But deep down he already knew nothing would be the same again. "What do you want from me?" he asked finally. Not angry, not scared, just tired. She looked at him with something close to sadness and said, "I want nothing. I am already yours, by design, by destiny, by code older than your stars. You do not need to want me for the bond to hold." Jake looked away, rubbing his face, thinking. Maybe he could call someone, the government, maybe a tech company, maybe someone smart enough to fix this. But all screens were still dead. No signal, no Wi-Fi, not even a clock ticking. Suddenly a knock came from the door, loud, firm, then again louder. Jake froze. Solari stood up quickly, her body glowing faintly, her eyes sharp. "Someone is here," she said, her voice low and ready. "And they are not here for coffee." Jake opened the door slightly and saw two men in dark uniforms standing straight, holding black cases. They had no badges, no smiles. Just a question in their cold voices. "Sir, we detected a signal from this residence 3 minutes ago. We need to check your systems." Jake swallowed hard, said, "I was just fixing an old bot. Maybe it triggered something. Nothing dangerous." The man said, "We'll need to confirm. Please step aside." Behind them, parked on the street, was a black van with no plates, windows like mirrors, and a low hum coming from its engine. Jake's skin crawled. He looked over his shoulder and saw Solari vanish into thin air with a blink of blue light. Men entered, scanning the room, looking at the robot shell, frowning as their devices blinked. Red, one of them, looked directly at Jake and said, "This tech is not standard civilian issue. Where did you get this code?" "I downloaded it from an open site." Jake replied, trying to sound calm, "I'm just a hobbyist." They shared a glance, then nodded. One spoke into a small device and said, "Target found. Initiate trace." Jake's ears rang. The air around him grew heavy. Suddenly a voice echoed from behind them, and it was Solari. She had reappeared, standing tall, her armor glowing bright, her voice like thunder. "Leave this place." Her face collapsed. Men turned fast, weapons drawn, but too late. She waved her hand, and a soft pulse burst from her body. The men dropped to the ground unconscious. No blood, no pain, just silence. Jake stared at her, mouth open, no words left in him. Solari walked to him, gently touching his shoulder. "I tried to stay hidden," she said, "but they forced my hand. More will come. They always do when the bond is formed." stepped away, heart still racing, and asked, what now? Do we run? Do we fight? Do we call someone? She shook her head and said, if we stay, they will come. If we leave, we may survive. There's a ship not far from here, but it cannot move without you. Why? Me, he asked, voice almost breaking. Why always me? Because your mind called to mine, and now we are joined, she said, her voice soft again, her fingers reaching out to him, not in force, but in offering. Come with me. Jake, not for power, not for war, but for answers. Jake stood there between fear and fire, between a door and a portal, knowing his life had already changed the moment he pressed the on button. He looked back once at his tools, his small quiet life, his coffee mug still warm on the table. Then he took her hand and the room filled with light. Asterisk. Jake stumbled as the ground shifted beneath his feet, light swirling around him, wind pushing from every direction, his hand still locked in hers, her silver fingers glowing with quiet heat, his breath short, his mind spinning with the weight of what had just happened. The air changed in a blink, cold replaced warmth, darkness replaced city lights, and now they stood in a strange metal chamber. The walls curved and pulsing, the floor like soft glass under his boots. Above them, small floating lights blinked in rhythm like stars, speaking a language only she understood. Where are we? He asked, voice shaky, legs trembling, heart crashing against his ribs. She let go of his hand and stepped forward, touching a wall, which lit up like water waking to the moon. She said softly, this is my vessel hidden beneath your world, since my fall, since the war, since the silence. Looked around, mouth dry, brain refusing to believe anything he saw. This is not real. He thought, this is a dream, a breakdown, a hallucination caused by sleep and stress, and too much tech repair. He reached toward the wall, pressed his hand against it, cold and real like steel. He touched his face and felt sweat and fear. Nothing about this was a dream. He looked at her again and stepped back, pointing a finger straight at her chest. You keep calling me your mate, he said louder this time. But I never asked for this. I never signed anything. I just wanted a robot to vacuum the floor, not an alien girlfriend who speaks in riddles and knocks out government agents. Ilari turned her head slowly, her expression unreadable, eyes glowing softly, her voice calm but firm. Your world uses words like contract and agreement to define bonds, but this bond is not paper and pen, it is code and frequency, and mind to mind. Jake threw up his hands, pacing like a caged animal. I didn't agree to anything, he yelled. I didn't choose you. I didn't even know you existed. I downloaded a free code. I just wanted help. I didn't want to be someone's soulmate. She stepped closer, her steps without sound, her presence heavy like a storm and yet gentle like snow. Her voice dropped low. Your mind called to mine. Not by accident, not by chance. You have lived with signals around you all your life, but only you could hear me. Only your thoughts opened the gate. Jake backed away again, sweat running down his neck, then stopped breathing fast and asked, what do you mean only me? I'm nobody. I fix broken machines in a tiny apartment. I don't have powers. I don't know alien languages. I burn toast every morning. Zellery looked at him, then reached into the air, pulling light into her palm, forming a sphere of blue flame. Spinning gently, she opened it, and images appeared. His childhood, his dreams, his fears, his moments of loneliness, and flashes of him building things alone. You are not nobody, she said. You are rare. Your brain sees patterns others ignore. Your heart speaks to signals others cannot hear. Your code is not just human. It is unique, and it reached through the barrier to find me. Jake stared at the spinning light, then stepped back, shaking his head, eyes wide. This is too much. This is insane. I want out. I want to go home. I want my old life back. I want you to undo whatever this bond thing is. You cannot unwrite a song that has been sung, she said, her voice soft but filled with something deep. Maybe sadness, maybe truth. The bond is not something you wear and take off. It lives in both of us now. If you try to break it, I will vanish, and not just from sight, but from time itself. Jake turned away, fists clenched, jaw tight. He stood in silence, the walls humming, the ship breathing around them. He thought of his small apartment, his empty bed, his broken clock, his robot parts, and then he thought of her floating down from a portal, glowing eyes, saying, mate. He turned back and said, then what happens now? You follow me. Everywhere you call me mate forever. What am I supposed to do with you? She smiled faintly, not with triumph but peace. I do not follow you. I walk with you, and not because you are my owner or king or master, but because your mind opened a door long sealed, and I am free because of you. Suddenly, the chamber shook, a sharp jolt from deep below. Alarms lit the walls, and the air shifted again. Something outside had found them. Something big, something fast. They are here, she whispered, her voice no longer calm but ready, her eyes sharpening, her armor pulsing with light. They trace the signal they want me back or dead. Jake stood frozen, then ran to a nearby console covered in strange symbols. Somehow he understood what they meant. His fingers moved without thinking, opening panels, flipping switches, activating shields. Even Zalari paused, watching him with surprise. You are sinking already, she said. Your bond is strengthening faster than expected. Your mind is adapting. Your hands speak my ship's language. This is rare. This is impossible. He stopped, turned to her, and said, maybe I'm more than just a guy who fixes toasters, but I'm still not your mate. She smiled again, only this time it was different. Not ancient, not cosmic, just real. Not yet, she said, but soon maybe. And outside space began to break. Asterisk. The ship trembled again, louder this time, the sound rising through the walls like thunder rolling across a steel ocean. Jake stumbled, holding the edge of a console, as the floor shifted beneath him, lights above flickering with warning signals. Zalari stood still, her eyes closed, her lips moving in a silent chant, speaking to the ship in ways beyond words. What's happening? Jake asked, though he already knew something, or someone had found them, the same people or creatures that locked her away. The same force that feared her power now wanted it back, and they were willing to tear the sky open to get it. She turned to him, face calm but voice sharp. We have 60 seconds before the strike. If they breach the hull, the bond will be targeted. You will be taken, or worse, unlinked and erased. Jake shook his head, his hands flying over the controls. I don't know how to fly a spaceship. I build coffee machines and vacuum bots. This is insane. You need to fly us out. Now I cannot without your mind, she answered gently. The bond links to the core, your thoughts, your will, your fear, even your hope. They power this ship. Without them, it cannot move. It was built to respond to a bonded pair. And now you are the only one who can unlock it. Jake took a deep breath and stepped forward, eyes locked on the control panel. It was no longer strange to him. The symbols made sense in ways he could not explain. His fingers hovered, then tapped commands that came like memories from a dream. Ship groaned, then answered with a rising hum. The walls began to shift, the ceiling opened, revealing the earth above them, buildings, roads, clouds, everything spinning like a fading memory below. Then came the light, a burning beam from the sky, a weapon fired by something enormous, hidden in orbit. It sliced through the ground where the ship had been buried, turning stone into molten fire, chasing the vessel as it rose. Jake yelled, we need to go faster, or we'll be fried. You must trust yourself, Zalari said, placing her hand on his shoulder. Your fear feeds hesitation. Your belief fuels motion. Focus on where you want to go, not where you fear to be. Closed his eyes, thought of the stars of distance, of a place with no trackers, no soldiers, no warships. His mind screamed escape, and the ship responded with a burst of light. It jumped forward like a slingshot through the clouds, slicing through the atmosphere, flames licking the edges as they broke free from gravity and soared into space. Opened his eyes, gasping as Earth shrank below them, blue and calm, like none of this had ever happened. Behind them, a massive ship emerged, dark and spiked like a floating nightmare, its weapons glowing, its path locked on their trail. That's not government tech, Jake said, staring at it. That thing doesn't belong to Earth. It doesn't, Zalari said. It belongs to the ones who created me, who feared me, who lost me. They have been hunting the signal ever since you woke. It can we outrun them? Jake asked, hands moving without pause, checking shields, rerouting, energy boosting engines. Not for long, she replied, but we can outsmart them. Jake smirked a little. I like that answer, but you better have a good trick, or we're both spaced. Zalari stepped toward the center of the ship, where a glowing circle pulsed beneath the floor. She knelt, placed both hands on it, and whispered words in her language. The air shimmered and a projection appeared, showing dozens of star paths. But only one marked with shifting light there, she said, pointing toward. A star cluster hidden inside a magnetic field. No signal can enter or leave. We can hide, we can breathe, we can think. Jake nodded, setting the course, holding his breath as the enemy ship fired. Another blast, missing by inches, the energy wave knocking them sideways, alarms screaming, walls shaking. Hold tight, he said, and the ship jumped again, faster than before, stretching light itself as it vanished between dimensions. Time slowed inside the jump. Stars turned into rivers, colors bled into one another. Jake felt like he was falling and floating and flying all at once. Zalari watched him quietly, her face unreadable, her body glowing faintly in the silence between worlds. You are stronger than I expected, she said finally. Your mind adapts, your courage surprises even me. Most anchors cannot link this fast or fly this well. Jake opened one eye, barely able to speak. Well, maybe I'm just desperate, or maybe Earth has prepared me by making me live with broken internet and rising rent. She laughed, the cum sound soft like music caught in gravity, and said, perhaps desperation is your gift, perhaps chaos is your strength. Asterisk. The ship slowed, exiting the jump, the stars returning one by one, the hidden system ahead filled with dust rings and spinning rocks. A perfect place to hide. Jake leaned back, wiping sweat from his face, breathing hard, and asked, what now? Do we wait? Do we fight? Do we sleep? We prepare. She said, they will come again, they always do. But now we are more than bond, we are team. He looked at her eyes, still glowing, armor still shining, and said, just one thing before we continue. She tilted her head, waiting for his words. Stop calling me your mate. She smiled, not in victory, but in understanding, and whispered, not today. Then maybe one day. And outside, the stars kept watch over two souls now joined by accident, by code, by fate. Asterisk. The hidden system was quiet. A place forgotten by stars and untouched by war, a graveyard of floating rock and ancient metal drifting without sound, without time, and in the middle of it all rested the ship, still pulsing softly, like a sleeping beast. Jake stood near a window, his eyes on the spinning dust beyond. His thoughts tangled, his breath slow, his hands holding a small tool, not to fix something, but just to feel grounded, just to feel human. Behind him, Zalari sat cross-legged, surrounded by floating crystals, each one showing a memory from a time long gone. Her armor was dim, her voice silent, but her presence still powerful, still heavy in the room. Finally turned and spoke, not angry, not afraid, just tired. I need to know what this bond really is, not the poetry, not the destiny stuff. I want the truth, the science, the core of it. She opened her eyes slowly, the crystals lowering gently like feathers. Returning to earth, she looked at him with something between sadness and pride, and said, the bond is not a gift. It is a design, a system built by creators who believed emotions could power machines and minds could guide stars. Jake frowned, sitting on the cold floor across from her, trying to follow her words, trying to feel less like a glitch in someone else's code. So you're saying this whole bond is just programming, just a connection like Bluetooth and signal, not just, she replied, reaching into the air and pulling a shape from light. It looked like a brain surrounded by wires wrapped in flame and sound. It is a code that learns it, adapts it, grows with emotion, with memory, with touch and pain and choice, and once activated it cannot be undone, only grown or ended. He looked away, the image too much, too strange, too real. He asked quietly, what happens if the bond ends? What happens to you? She hesitated, then answered, if the bond ends by force, I break completely. I was built for war, but powered by mind, by connection. Without it, I collapse into code and ash and silence forever. Jake stood, walking in circles, voice rising. So I'm trapped in this. If I walk away, you vanish. If I say no, you disappear. And I live with that weight. I never asked for this. I never agreed to carry someone's life in my thoughts. She stood now to her height, more than her eyes glowing once more, not in anger, but clarity. The bond does not force you to love me. It does not demand romance or touch. It only links our minds to create something neither of us could be alone. I am not asking for your heart. I am asking for your trust. He stopped, breathing hard, his hands shaking, then said, what about my mind? It feels different. I remember things I never knew. I understand tech I never touched. Am I changing? Yes, she said. because the bond rewrites both ways my presence. Unlocks parts of your brain, parts that slept until now. You were always more than a builder, more than a fixer. You are a creator, a thinker, a signal sender. Jake sat again, head in his hands. Memories flooding memories that were not his battlefields. Stars burning languages in his dreams, his fingers building weapons he never learned to name. Suddenly, alarms blinked red across the ship, warning pulses. Humming through the walls, something was near, not the hunters, not the warship, but something else. Something smaller, faster, darker. Celery touched. The console and a map appeared, showing a ship moving toward them. Weaving between the rocks like a shadow with teeth, she whispered their name, the Rogs. Jake looked confused, never heard of them, and she replied, they are signal scavengers. They smell unstable bonds, they feed on broken links, and use the remains to power their hive. Jake jumped to his feet. That's horrible, and she nodded, her face grim. We must move, but the jump core is still charging. You must hold them with thought, hold the shield with your focus, while I finish the sequence. Stepped to the console, placed both hands on the glass, closed his eyes, and imagined a wall, a shield, a ring of fire. Around them the ship responded, pulsing. With his heartbeat glowing with his fear and will, outside the small black ship fired a needle of energy. It struck the shield and bounced, but cracked the surface. Jake winced, holding the image in his mind, tighter, harder, brighter. Celery chanted words. The ship obeying her every tone, the crystals glowing, the engines rising, their light spreading like wings in the dark. One more hit, Jake whispered, holding on with his last thought. Then the ship jumped again, stars bending as they vanished from the trap. They landed in silence in a calm pocket of space. Jake fell back, breathing hard. Zalari knelt beside him, her hand on his forehead, checking not with medicine, but with connection. You held the shield, she said. You protected the bond, not for me, but for yourself, and that is the first truth of what we are becoming. Looked at her eyes still glowing with stars, and said, this still doesn't make us Soulmate. She smiled softly. Not yet, she whispered, but one truth always leads to another, and the ship drifted on between stars and secrets, with two minds no longer strangers, and a bond no longer silent. Asterisk. The stars shifted like restless eyes as the ship hovered near the edge of a dying moon, its light flickering across jagged rocks and hollow craters. The silence deep and wide, but inside the vessel tension burned hotter than any sun. Jake stood near the command deck, his fists clenched, his thoughts loud enough to shake the air, his heart unsure if it was anger or fear or something worse. Zalari watched him from across the room, her posture calm but her mind not still. She knew what was coming before the signals arrived, before the codes lit up on the screen, before the transmission opened with a voice too cold to belong to anything human. Jake turned sharply as the message echoed through the chamber, a voice sharp like broken glass, announcing itself not with words, but with power. We have found you again, said the voice. The bond is real and must be tested, and this time we bring one of our own. A flash of light burst through the outer window, and a second ship appeared, not massive like the war vessels, not sleek like theirs, but heavy, brutal, painted with scars and symbols from a culture lost to time. Jake stared at the image as it zoomed in, a tall figure standing on the other ship's bridge, armored in dark steel, his eyes glowing with the same fire he had seen in Zalari when she arrived, only colder, emptier. Who is that, he asked, stepping back, something in his chest pulling tight. Zalari answered with a voice low and heavy, that is Rover, a bonded one like you, but twisted, trained to conquer instead of connect. His mate is not his partner. She is his weapon, and now they want to challenge us. Jake laughed once, no joy in the sound, and said, challenge us like a duel, like some alien game of king versus king. Not a game, she replied, more like a signal test. If they can break our bond, their power increases and ours vanishes forever, and in their world only the strongest bond survives. The ships locked position across from one another, weapons off, shields pulsing in sync, as if the space between them had become an arena shaped by thought and fire. A message came again, choose your ground or we choose it for you. The challenge begins now. Jake looked at her, his voice shaking but firm. What do we do? Answer, she said, and placed her hand on his chest, then pressed her forehead to her voice, whispering into his thoughts, not with sound, but with memory. Trust the link, let it guide you. Your fear is fuel, your will is blade. Suddenly the ship transformed inside, reshaping into a circular arena made of light and echo and space. Designed not for weapons, but for minds. Jake and Zalari appeared in the center, not with armor or guns, but connected by a thread of thought that glowed between them like a living flame. Across from them, Rover stepped forward, his body thick with rage, his armor screaming with sharp lines. Beside him floated a woman, her body silver, her eyes blank, her presence cold. Rover pointed and spoke one word: break. Battle began not with fists but with thought, waves of energy crashing between the pairs, pushing, pulling, testing, trying to snap the thread between Jake and Zalari. Jake staggered, feeling memories, not his blood, not his pain, confusion rushing in old battles, lives lost, regrets thrown like weapons. His knees buckled. Zalari held his hand tighter, her voice a light in the storm. Stay with me, remember who you are. And remember, the bond is not just code, it is choice. Jake dug deeper into himself, past doubt, past anger, into something pure. He saw her through the link, not as an alien or construct, but as someone standing beside him without demand, without control. He stood straight, eyes burning with light, and said, "You want my bond? Then come take it." Power surged from them, a wave of shared will crashing into Rover and his mate, pushing them back, bending their thread until it cracked. Rover roared, charging forward, his energy dark and wild, striking again and again. But Jake held firm, and with each strike his belief grew, and the bond burned brighter. Then something shifted in Rover's partner. Her eyes flickered, her hand trembled, her connection wavered, as if something inside her remembered freedom. She turned slowly, looked at Jake, then at Zalari, then back at the man who controlled her, and in one silent motion, she released her hold, and the thread between them snapped like glass under heat. Rover fell forward, stunned, broken, his energy drained. His power lost, the arena dissolved, the challenge ended. Jake dropped to his knees, breathing hard, his skin cold with sweat, but his mind sharp, clear, awake in a way he had never felt before. Zalari knelt beside him, her hand on his cheek. "You stood not because you were trained, but because you chose to stand, and that is the strength of a real bond." Jake laughed again, this time with truth, and said, "I still don't know what we are." She smiled, "Not mate, not master, not machine." She said, "Maybe we are just two minds who decided not to break." And the ship turned from the shattered moon, carrying two souls who had just survived the first war of the mates, and were now ready for whatever challenge waited in the stars. Asterisk. The stars were quiet, but not calm. The silence was the kind that came before thunder, the kind that held breath, waiting, and across the edge of a dying galaxy, Jake's ship hovered between what was and what would come. Inside the chamber, the bond core pulsed brighter than ever, not because of fear, not because of pain, but because of something new. Something solid, something earned. Jake stood beside the console, eyes locked on the screen, watching the wave of ships moving through space, heading toward Earth. Black vessels covered in symbols older than history, all flying under one banner, the same one Rover once wore. "They know about you now," Zalari said, standing beside him, her voice steady, her armor glowing. "They know the bond is strong, and if they cannot control it, they will try to erase it." Jake clenched his fists, his mind already building the path forward. "We don't run, we don't hide. If they want Earth, they'll find out. It fights back." Zalari tilted her head, a small smile touching her lips. "So you have accepted the bond then?" At last he looked at her and said, "I haven't accepted anything. I just hate bullies, and I hate that they think they can take what they want. So let's show them what happens when they mess with the wrong planet." The ship moved faster than any tracker could follow, slicing through the stars. Like a blade charged by fire and thought and stubbornness, they entered Earth orbit in silence above a blue planet, unaware of the coming storm, but not unready, because across the world screens flickered, satellites shook, and humanity noticed. Jake opened a signal wide and strong, no encryption, no secrets. He spoke to every channel, every screen, every mind willing to listen. "They are coming," he said. "They want to erase what they fear, and they Fear the bond between mind and machine, between human and other. But we will not break, we will not kneel, we are more than soft skin and quiet voices. We are the storm waiting to be called. The message spread like wildfire and across cities and skies. Humans moved not in panic but in purpose. Scientists, hackers, soldiers, even school kids. Anyone who had ever picked up a tool, or fixed a wire, or dreamed of stars, they all responded. From the mountains, drones launched from bunkers, old machines awakened. From rooftops, antennas pulsed with new life, and above them all, Jake's ship became the signal, the light, the guide. Enemy arrived, dark ships circling the planet like vultures. But when they tried to drop their weapons, they failed when they tried. To block the signal, they failed. When they tried to break the bond, they failed. Because Jake was no longer one voice, he was millions linked by thought, by purpose, by defiance. SLI watched from beside him, eyes wide. This was not war. This was not chaos. This was evolution. Your people are not what I was told, she whispered. They adapt, they rise. They fight like stars burning in rebellion. Jake smiled. This is what we do. We fall, we learn, we get mad, we get up, and we make sure no one forgets who we are. Enemy ships attacked, and Earth responded not with one weapon, but with thousands of minds united through code and belief and refusal to vanish in the final strike. When the largest enemy vessel charged a weapon meant to tear the sky open, Jake and Kofa Zalari fused their minds into the core, the bond reaching its peak, forming a shield so vast it wrapped the Earth like a second moon. The weapon fired, and the shield held, and the enemy saw what they feared most, not destruction but resistance, not technology but soul. One by one the ships broke, fled, vanished, leaving behind only silence and the glowing threat of victory inside the ship. Jake opened his eyes slowly, exhausted, but smiling, his body tired. But Holexalari sat beside him, her hand on his voice a whisper. We did it. She nodded. No longer just a machine, no longer just a bondmate, but something else, something more. You led them, she said, not because the bond made you, not because I pushed you, but because you chose to rise. Jake laughed, a little voice dry. You sure I'm not your mate now? She leaned closer, her eyes soft with something rare, something close to human. Mate, she said, a partner, and maybe even a friend. He looked out at the stars, still bright, still watching, and said, maybe this is not the end. Maybe this is just chapter 1. In the days that followed, Earth changed not with fire, but with unity. Humans no longer feared the stars they built for them. They dreamed again, and Jake returned to his small apartment, now upgraded with alien metal and glowing lights, and Maid. One last thing, a new assistant, small, simple, and silent. Solari watched him build it, a smile on her face. What will you name this one? Jake looked at the bot, then at her, then said something soft with laughter. Maybe Alexa. She raised an eyebrow, and he added, just kidding, and they laughed beneath the stars, with the bond still glowing between them, a reminder that even in a universe full of danger, the most powerful force is not war, not tech, not fear. It is choice, it is connection, it is humanity. Hell, yeah.